This is a post by Anna, who received a phone call from her daughter after a decade of no communication, informing her of the death of her son. The content that Anna shares is an incredible and unbelievable story. The ugly behavior of selfish adults has resulted in a sad ending for innocent children. What is the shocking truth that happened to Anna and her children?
May I tell you what happened to me? It all started with a phone call from my daughter Leah, whom I haven't contacted for more than 10 years since the divorce. I am now 36 years old and have been single since my divorce from my ex-husband, who was more than 10 years older than me. I currently work as a clerk for a small company. I got divorced when I was 25, just after giving birth to my second child, a daughter who is now the mother of a 2-year-old son. Right after our divorce, my ex-husband remarried. I will explain the details of our divorce later. At first, I was curious about the phone call from an unknown number. I thought it might be a sales or some other type of call. However, since I was alone during my lunch break, I answered the phone and it turned out to be from my daughter. I was really surprised. I was confused about what to ask and what to say, but my daughter Leah was even more confused. Anyway, I asked her, "What happened? Did something happen?" She burst into tears and said,
My brother committed suicide. Please come to the hospital right away.
My mind went blank for a moment when I heard those words. But I knew I had to go to the hospital, so I asked Leah where it was located and informed my boss. Since I didn't want to explain too much and was also confused, I only said, "My family has been taken to the hospital." I got my bag and phone, and without even saying goodbye to my colleagues, I rushed out of the office. The hospital Leah mentioned was a large general hospital that was famous in the area, only a 20 minutes taxi ride away. When I arrived at the hospital, I told the receptionist my daughter and son's names and that I was their mother. Then the nurse in charge arrived immediately. She told me that the doctor in charge is currently explaining the situation to my ex-husband's remarried partner and Leah. It was there that I first learned that my ex-husband Nathan is currently hospitalized with cancer. He's also in the same hospital. I told the nurse that I was the ex-spouse and that I had to come here because my daughter called me. I was asked to wait for a moment and was directed to an unused examination room. I still didn't understand what was happening, and the situation was unclear to me. I just felt my heart pounding loudly. After a while, my daughter arrived. I saw her for the first time in over 10 years, but to be honest, I didn't feel happy at the moment. Nathan's new wife wasn't there. Leah was crying and said,
My brother is dead.
I hugged my daughter, and the words, "Why? Why did my son have to die?" came out of my mouth without me even realizing it. After she calmed down a bit, I asked her what had happened. But then, this is what she said to me.
You killed him, Mom. Because you abandoned us. That's why my brother died.
The shock of being told that was too much, and I couldn't say anything. I didn't intend to abandon either my daughter or my son. I didn't understand why she said such a thing at the moment. The divorce and my children's upbringings are complicated, so I'll try to write them down in order. I'm sorry if it's difficult to understand. I waited for my daughter to calm down and listened to everything she had to say. Here's a summary of what she told me. When my daughter was young, her father remarried. His new spouse's name was Mara. The children believed that the Mara was their biological mother, but as my daughter grew older and learned more, she heard about her birth mother. She was told that her birth mother, me, had abandoned the children and was a terrible mother. After hearing this, she hated me for a long time. I don't blame her for hating me if that's what she was told. She then thought that her brother's suicide was because I had abandoned them and her father had remarried Mara. Mara was heavily involved in his death. When my daughter and I were at the hospital, we were too overwhelmed with grief and confusion to have a decent conversation. Leah secretly called me We met up later. I decided to tell her the whole story, including the reasons why I divorced her father.
After not seeing him for over a decade, Anna was devastated when her son died. She was also hit with unbelievable accusations from her daughter. Anna began to tell the story of her life with her ex-husband, from their meeting to their divorce. What was the truth behind Anna, who had been accused of abandoning her children? And how did that lead to the tragic ending of her son's suicide?
I came from a rural area and attended the university in the city. It's embarrassing to say, but I did some modeling work at the time. But I didn't plan on continuing to model in the future, so I started working at a restaurant. The restaurant was a high-end one that was introduced me by an acquaintance, and I started working there because I thought it'd be a good experience. It was there that I met my ex-husband Nathan, who had come as a customer. It seemed that he had fallen in love with me at first sight and had been asking me out on dates since our first meeting. Of course, I wasn't seeing anyone at the time, but I wasn't very enthusiastic about dating someone who was over 10 years older than me. But the restaurant manager, who was an acquaintance of Nathan, encouraged me to go on a date with him at least once. So I agreed to go on a date with him. Nathan, who was considerably older than me, would pick me up and take me out for delicious meals in his car. While talking, he taught me many things I didn't know before. As a naive person from the countryside, I found myself drawn to him when I realized all of the things he could teach me. He was the son of the trading company owner that had branches all over Asia and was set to take over the family business. I had heard that he was already in charge of most of the operations by then. After we started dating, he quickly talked about wanting to have a relationship with the intention of getting married. People around me also said that I was marrying up. But at the time, I was ignorant and didn't really understand what was happening and wasn't motivated by materialistic desires. I was attracted to his sincere personality. I felt secure with his older, supportive presence. We quickly went to see my parents and decided to get married. He was my first serious relationship, so everything moved very fast. I couldn't really grasp the reality of it all. I graduated from college and got married at the same time, and soon gave birth to my son. It was then that I was able to experience the happiness of being a mother and truly realized that I was married. 2 years later, I gave birth to my daughter Leah. Since we got married quickly, some people were concerned about the drastic change in my husband's behavior after we got married. I felt that way too, but his change may not have been that extreme, but it could have been what people around us predicted. After we got married, Nathan changed a little. He often bought me beautiful dresses, accessories, and shoes, and took me to parties and other events. But I felt like he had lost interest in me as a person. After we got married, he no longer seemed to be interested in my story or anything about me. Maybe to him, I was like a trophy wife or a means to have an heir. At the time, I didn't know these things. I was just happy to have my son and daughter. But at some point, I realized that something was wrong with me. It was about 6 months after my daughter was born when my appetite decreased and I started losing weight. I have started experiencing difficulty sleeping even when my daughter didn't cry at night. I became easily tired and my mood was low, and it started affecting my parenting. I was suffering from postpartum depression, although I didn't realize it at the time, and I only felt a vague sense of anxiety. One day, I confided in Nathan that I wanted to go to the hospital. However, he told me, "I don't want my wife to be seen going to a mental health clinic. You don't need to go see a doctor." I foolishly obeyed him, thinking to myself, "Oh, going to the hospital is something to be ashamed of." Looking back, what he said was terrible, as he only cared about his reputation and didn't care about my well-being. Since it was so hard for me, I decided to turn to a friend I was once close to. But Nathan didn't like me seeing friends from before we were married and always warned me, "Don't do anything that would embarrass me." So I talked to my friend through text messages on my phone. My friend listened to me and told me that I should go to the hospital. I decided to try asking Nathan once again for permission to go see a doctor, but when he saw my phone, he accused me of having an affair with my friend. It's true that my friend's name was gender neutral. I could have called her or have him meet her, but despite my attempts to explain the situation, he refused to believe me. I kept explaining the truth and told him I was not having an affair. But one day, he suddenly presented me with divorce papers, which were already filled out. I tried to reason with him, and explained that I didn't want a divorce, nor was I having an affair, but he refused to listen. He left our shared home and started communicating with me only through his lawyer. I felt lost and had no one to talk to, not even my parents who had been happy for me when I got married. My postpartum depression symptoms grew stronger day by day, and I was mentally exhausted. As a result, I had no choice but to agree to the divorce. But I did not want to give up my children. Unfortunately, my husband had collected a lot of evidence that made me look like I was not taking care of them at all. In the end, I lost custody of my children. It was my ignorance that caused all this. But at that time, there was nothing I could do. After that, I was not allowed to see my children, and I was not given any contact information. I only found out through internet news that my ex-husband had remarried to a woman named Mara.
The reason for Anna's divorce was unfair and beyond comprehension. No one could blame her daughter for hating Anna if all she knew were stories she heard from her father. However, the truth that Anna was later informed of was even more terrifying. What was the shocking truth that Anna would learn when she reunited with her daughter?
I apologize for my lengthy story. From here on out, I'll be telling you what I heard from my daughter Leah. After the hospital visit, my daughter and I met again to have a real talk. She listened to my story carefully and believed in me. Leah had heard from her father, Mara, grandparents, and everyone else that I was a bad woman. Although Mara was very young, she loved both her son and daughter very much. Leah said that she was happy that her mother was young and beautiful, and was happy when everyone envied her for having such a beautiful mother. Mara had difficulty conceiving and was undergoing infertility treatment. After many attempts, she finally became pregnant when Leah was in elementary school and her brother was in middle school. Mara gave birth to a boy. Around that time, Leah's father lost his father, who was a representative of the company, making the business even busier. Leah's father had a lifestyle of going back and forth between overseas and his hometown. It was around this time that Mara suddenly started to act towards my son in a way that seemed like harassment. Her attitude toward my daughter remained the same, but Mara started to treat my son coldly. I heard there were even days when she didn't prepare meals for him. My son had a quiet and docile personality and didn't protest against Mara's behavior, but he gradually became less energetic. Mara also tried to hide what she was doing, so her husband, who was always busy with work, didn't notice anything. One day, my daughter finally gathered the courage to talk to her father, but she was scolded with, "Don't say stupid things," and he began to treat her like a rebellious teenager. At that time, my daughter thought for the first time that she wanted to meet me in person and hear my side of the story. She felt like she didn't really belong in the family and became lonely. So, she wanted to know what kind of person her biological mother was and if everyone was right in saying that I was a terrible person. Then, my daughter asked one of her classmates, who was also a childhood friend, about me. She thought her mother might know me. Her friend's mother and I knew each other, and she had been very kind to me when my son was just born. Leah told her friend's mother just enough about the situation, and she gave her my contact information. Although we hadn't been in touch recently, my phone number had not changed, and that's how Leah was able to reach me. But Leah said that she had a hard time gathering the courage to actually contact me. And then she noticed that her brother, who had just started junior high school, was being bullied. She saw his textbooks being vandalized with terrible graffiti. and his gym clothes being torn apart. She asked him about it indirectly, but he didn't say anything. When my son became a high school student, he apparently got a girlfriend. By that time, Leah had become a middle school student. The girlfriend, who was from a different school, went over to their house a few times and was very kind to my daughter. But Leah said that during that time, my son still seemed to be bullied at school. But after he started going out with his girlfriend, she said that he looked like he was doing a little better. Nathan also liked my son's girlfriend, and he even talked about marriage although it was too early. However, Mara's harassment towards my son continued during that time. Then one day, Nathan fainted while he was at work and had to be hospitalized urgently. They found out that he had cancer. Around the same time, my son suddenly broke up with his girlfriend. Leah wondered why they broke up. It was a restless period for my daughter and Mara as well, due to Nathan's hospitalization. Leah said that she didn't have many opportunities to spend time with her brother. And then the incident happened. My daughter panicked and contacted me. My son must have been pushed into a corner without being able to tell anyone. I regretted that I wasn't there to listen to him. Anna's son was harassed by his father's new partner, and he was also being bullied at school. To make matters worse, his girlfriend broke up with him. Anna heard this from Leah. However, the truth didn't end there. The hidden truth was about to be revealed by Anna. After hearing my daughter's story, I blamed myself. It's my selfish regret of wanting to help my son. But at the same time, I felt a boiling rage towards Mara. How could she harass children like that? And then, I realized why Mara was harassing my son. So, I decided to go to my son's school to find out why he was being bullied. I was able to hear from some of his classmates about how he was bullied with completely unfounded rumors that are too terrible to mention here. It turned out that they were baseless rumors. And the next thing I had to do was to meet my son's ex-girlfriend. With the help of my daughter, we searched through social media. I was able to contact her and meet with her. She said she learned about my son's death through a classmate, and she had been regretting it ever since, saying she wanted to talk about it all along. The truth she tearfully told was this. Mara suddenly visited her. The girl's father ran a small company that was a subcontractor for Nathan's business. Mara threatened her, saying, "Break up with my son. If you don't, your father will be fired. Your mother will also be sad. If you tell anyone about this, she'll face the same consequence." She says she got scared and reluctantly broke up with my son. But ever since learning about my son's death, she couldn't sleep at night and cried every day with regret. It was also Mara who spread the unfounded rumors about my son at school. And it was Mara who separated my son and his girlfriend. I asked my daughter to meet with Mara, and I have actually already met her. Mara confessed everything to me. "I wanted my son to become the heir to Nathan's company since he was born. That's why your son was in my way." And she cried and apologized to me and my daughter, saying, "It was enough for him to leave the house, or to transfer to another school, or go study abroad. I never thought he would take his own life. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I could only watch Mara without saying anything. I couldn't put my uncontrollable anger into words. My daughter was also just quietly listening, shedding tears. In the end, what I had to do was to go and tell my ex-husband the truth. He was emaciated and looked weak as ever. I told him everything about what Mara had done and about our son. And I also told him about what had happened since then when my daughter contacted me. Nathan just weakly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." But his apology didn't make me or my daughter feel any better. Even if he apologized, our son would never come back. And then my weakened ex-husband began to talk about what had happened when he divorced me. He said that he was already dating Mara when he gave me the divorce papers. I didn't feel any emotions towards him, even when he apologized for that. In the end, Mara was the one who watched over him until the end. But I heard that the subordinate he had been nurturing at work took over his position after he died. Later, my daughter graduated from high school and moved out when she became a university student. She now lives alone near me. I can't be a mother to her now that she's already grown up. Her words,
"You killed him, Mom!"
were directed towards me and also towards Mara. I feel so sorry for my daughter, who has to keep hating the existence of a mother. But there's only one thing I can do for my son who passed away. I want to do anything I can for my daughter's happiness from now on.
The terrifying and sad truth that Anna revealed ended up with no one being saved. The innocent children were just being manipulated by the selfish adults. All we can hope for is that Leah and Anna will have at least a little bit of happiness in their future. Thank you for watching until the end.